Dusk came hard on the frontier, dragged him by a wind that scraped the land bare and carried dust like a warning. The road stretched empty and tired, a ribbon of dirt carved by wagons and regret. That was where the cowboy rode, slow, deliberate, when a shape broke free from the wind. A boy stumbled into the road, no more than 12, coat too thin for the chill, boots worn to the sole. He raised both hands, palms shaking, eyes wide with a fear that didn't belong to someone so young. The horse reared slightly. The cowboy checked the reins and waited. "Sir," the boy said, voice cracking as if it might shatter. He swallowed and forced the words out. "If they come, hide my sister. Please." The wind stole the rest of his breath. He bent forward, hands on his knees, fighting tears like they were another enemy on the trail. Behind him, half hidden by scrub and shadow, a smaller figure stood frozen, a girl clutching a bundle to her chest, eyes locked on the stranger with a terror too old for her face. "Who's they?" the cowboy asked. The boy shook his head, frantic. "They don't stop. They don't listen. They take." His gaze flicked to the horizon. That was when the cowboy saw it too. Dust. A low, moving cloud rising where the land dipped and vanished. Riders, more than one, coming fast, careless of being seen. Hoofbeats hadn't reached them yet, but they would. Soon. The boy stepped closer, hands clenched now. "I can run," he said. "I'll lead them away. Just hide her." The girl whimpered, a small sound swallowed by the wind. The cowboy looked from the children to the dust, then back again. He took in the details most men missed. The bruises half hidden by dirt, the way the boy positioned himself, slightly in front of his sister without thinking, the way fear had sharpened him instead of breaking him. Silence settled, heavy and deliberate. Then the cowboy swung down from his horse. He didn't rush, didn't shout. He rested a hand on the saddle horn and met the boy's eyes. "No," he said quietly. The boy stiffened. Despair flashed, then anger. "You promised." "I didn't say I'd hide," the cowboy cut in, calm as stone. He glanced once more at the rising dust. "Closer now. I said I'd help." He turned toward the oncoming riders, adjusting the rifle at his shoulder. "I don't hide children," he said, "and I don't run." The wind howled louder, carrying the first echo of hooves. The line had been drawn. The cabin sat alone in a shallow draw, its timbers darkened by years of wind and weather. The cowboy pushed the door open with his boot and stepped aside, letting the children enter first. He didn't rush them, didn't touch them. He simply held the door and watched the horizon while they crossed the threshold, as if danger might try to follow them inside. The boy stayed close to his sister, eyes sharp, measuring every sound. He scanned the room the way a grown man would, corners first, then windows, then the rifle rack above the hearth. He didn't ask questions. He counted exits. Trust, for him, was a tool you picked up carefully, if at all. The sister hovered near the door, fingers tight in the hem of her dress, flinching when the fire popped. She kept her gaze low, like the ground might be safer than faces. The cowboy moved with deliberate calm. He set his hat on the peg. He unbuckled his gun belt and laid it on the table. Slow, visible, intentional. "You're safe here," he said, voice low, not promising what he couldn't keep. "But if trouble comes, you do what I say. That's the bargain." The boy nodded once. Not agreement, acknowledgement. He fetched water, poured it into chipped cups, and slid them across the table without standing over the children. He pointed out where they could sleep, where to hide if shots rang out, which floorboard creaked near the back door. "No surprises," he said. "Not for you. Not for me." The words settled like rules in a place that had known none. Outside, the wind worried the eaves. Inside, the cabin felt smaller with fear pressing in. The sister finally sat by the fire, hands extended toward the heat, shoulders hunched as if expecting it to be taken away. The boy stayed on his feet, listening, always listening. When the cowboy barred the windows and checked the lanterns, he explained each step. When he set a bucket of water by the door and a spare blanket near the hearth, he did it in plain sight. Nothing hidden, nothing sudden. Trust, he knew, didn't grow from words. It grew from what you chose not to do. By the time night settled heavy on the roof, The cabin had become something fragile but real, a refuge made not of walls, but of restraint. And in that quiet, the boy finally exhaled, just enough to believe that for one night, hiding might not be the only way to survive. Night settles heavy around the cabin, pressing in from every side. The wind dies down, replaced by the soft pop of burning wood and the distant cry of something hunting in the dark. Inside, the children sit close to the fire, shadows stretching long behind them. The boy keeps his back straight, jaw tight, as if daring the night to try again. His sister stays half hidden in the blanket the cowboy gave her, eyes lifted, watching everything without a word. It's the boy who finally speaks. His voice is low, rushed, as though saying it fast might make it hurt less. He tells of a small settlement gone wrong, men who wore badges some days and masks on others, men who took food, money, and finally people, calling it law. Their parents stood up once. Just once. That was all it took. The boy's hands curl into fists as he talks, knuckles white, his body braced like he expects to be struck for telling the truth. His sister doesn't add much, but when she does, it's precise. She remembers details others might miss. The sound of spurs on wood, the smell of whiskey before the shouting started, the way one man laughed when no one else did. She flinches when the fire cracks too loudly, yet her eyes stay sharp, absorbing the room, the doors, the windows. She is quiet, not weak. Quiet because silence kept her alive. The cowboy listens without interruption. He doesn't pace. He doesn't curse. He only nods now and then, eyes fixed on the flames, like he's watching old memories burn their way back to the surface. When the boy finishes, there's a long pause, thick, uncomfortable. Then the cowboy speaks, slow and measured. He doesn't offer comfort he can't guarantee. He offers honesty. He tells them he's seen men like the ones hunting them, men who blur the line between law and theft until it disappears entirely. He admits he once rode with people who claimed to be keeping order, until he saw who paid the price for that order. He doesn't name the battles, but the scars in his voice do that for him. He crossed lines once. He carries them still. And because of that, he made himself a promise, never again to look away when the innocent were cornered. That's when the deeper truth slips out. The men aren't just hunting for sport or control. The boy reveals what he's been hiding. Papers their father kept, documents showing stolen land, stolen titles, names tied to powerful interests. Proof that could drag more than one man into the light. The sister reaches into her coat and produces a folded bundle, worn soft from being handled too often. The cowboy doesn't touch it. He doesn't need to. He already understands. The fire burns lower. Outside, the dark listens. What's chasing them isn't just cruelty, it's exposure. And in that quiet cabin, 3 lives intersect, bound now by truth, by choice, and by the knowledge that some fights don't let you walk away once you've seen what's really at stake. The warning came on horseback. Dust rose first, thin and deliberate, curling above the low hills beyond the cabin. The cowboy saw it from the porch, 3 riders moving slow, not rushing, not hiding. Men who wanted to be seen. Men who believed fear did the work for them. He didn't reach for his rifle right away. He just stood there, still as the land itself, and waited. The boy saw them too. His face drained of what little color it had. He grabbed his sister's hand and pulled her back toward the cabin wall, eyes darting for places to hide. "They're here," he whispered. "I told you they don't stop." His voice cracked, not with cowardice, but with certainty earned the hard way. The riders reined up just out of rifle range. One of them laughed, loud and careless, the sound carrying easy in the open air. "Cowboy," he called, "you got something that don't belong to you." Another leaned in his saddle, eyes fixed on the cabin door, hand over the children. "We'll ride on. No need for trouble." Trouble. As if it were optional. The boy tugged at the cowboy's coat. "Please," he said, urgent now. "We can run. We can hide in the rocks. That's what we always do." He was already planning the route in his head, how fast his sister could move, where they might disappear. The cowboy finally stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, didn't posture. He simply rested his hand on the porch rail and met the riders' stares one by one. "You're done here," he said. "Turn around." The laughter stopped. One of the men spat into the dust. "You don't know who you're talking to." The cowboy nodded once. "I know enough." Silence stretched tight, dangerous. The riders glanced at each other, not used to being refused, not used to a man who didn't bargain. After a long moment, the lead rider tipped his hat. "We'll be back," he said softly. "And next time we won't ask." They turned and rode off, dust swallowing them again. Behind him, the boy stood frozen. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. "They don't stop." The cowboy looked back at the cabin, then down at the children. "Neither do I." The cabin changed once the choice was made. No longer just a place to hide. It became a line drawn in the dirt. The cowboy moved with calm purpose, not rushed, not dramatic, every motion deliberate. He barred the windows with thick planks worn smooth by time, testing each nail with the heel of his hand. The door was reinforced, hinges checked, latch tightened until it sat firm. Outside, he studied the land the way some men read scripture, counting steps, angles, shadows. If they came, they would come through open ground. That mattered. Inside, he laid the rifles out on the table, one by one, cleaning each with practiced care. The boy watched closely, fear still sharp in his eyes, but curiosity beginning to push through. The cowboy didn't bark orders. He spoke low, steady. "If it turns loud," he said, "you don't run unless I say. You breathe. You listen." He showed the boy where to crouch behind the heavy stove, where the wall was thickest, where stray rounds were least likely to find flesh. "Fear makes noise," he added. "Quiet keeps you alive." The boy swallowed hard and nodded. He wasn't taught how to fight. He was taught how to endure, how to stay still when instinct screamed to bolt, how to count breaths when the world narrowed to sound and shadow. The cowboy placed a small knife in the boy's hand, not as a weapon, but as a promise. "You won't need it," he said, "but knowing it's there helps." The girl moved through the cabin like a ghost, saying little, doing much. She fetched water without being asked, laid out clean cloth for wounds not yet earned, stacked extra wood near the hearth, so no one would need to cross the room under fire. Her hands trembled once, just once, when a distant shout carried on the wind. Then she steadied herself and kept working. Fear hadn't broken her. It had taught her how to be careful. As night settled, the three of them shared a simple meal. No speeches, no reassurances that everything would be all right, just presence. The cowboy took the chair closest to the door, back straight, eyes always moving. The boy sat near the stove, exactly where he'd been told. The girl lingered by the table, close enough to help, far enough to stay safe. They were not family. Not yet. But something stronger than fear had taken root in that small cabin. A decision made together. A refusal to run. Strangers bound not by blood, but by choice. Outside, the wind carried the sound of riders somewhere in the dark. Inside, the fire burned steady. And for the first time since the plea was spoken at dusk, no one thought about hiding anymore. Night came down hard and fast, like a lid slammed shut. The wind died first. Then the crickets. Silence spread across the land so complete it felt unnatural, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, the boy sat rigid behind the overturned table, knuckles white around a rifle too large for him. His sister crouched beside the hearth, eyes wide but steady, trusting the man who stood between them and the dark. Outside, hooves whispered through the grass. The cowboy didn't move. He stood near the door, lantern turned low, listening, not just with his ears, but with the part of him that had survived too many nights like this. He counted riders by sound alone. One on the left flank, two circling wide, another dismounting close enough that the floorboard seemed to feel it. They weren't hiding anymore. They were closing in. A voice cut through the dark. "Come," mocking. "Hand over the children, old man. This doesn't have to end messy." The cowboy stepped onto the porch, rifle resting easy in his hands. Lantern light spilled across his face, steady and unafraid. "You're already messy," he said. "You just haven't realized it yet." Gunfire exploded without warning. The first shot shattered a window, spraying glass across the room. The boy flinched, but didn't run. The cowboy fired back, his rifle barking once, clean, precise. A scream followed from the darkness. The siege had begun. Shots came from 3 sides now. The cabin shook under the impact of lead slamming into wood. Smoke rolled thick as thunderclouds. The cowboy moved with purpose, not haste, reloading, shifting positions, never firing twice from the same place. Outside, the attackers shouted orders over one another, confidence fraying as resistance proved stronger than expected. Inside, the sister crawled low, dragging a box of cartridges exactly where he'd told her to. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She remembered every word he'd said during preparation. The boy followed suit, steadying his breathing the way he'd been taught. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled them. A figure rushed the porch. The cowboy turned just as a body slammed against the door, trying to force entry. Wood splintered. A second body joined the first. He braced, fired through the crack, and the pressure vanished in a tangle of curses and retreating footsteps. Then came the wound. A shot caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him back against the wall. Pain flared white-hot, but he gritted his teeth and stayed upright. Blood soaked his sleeve. The boy cried out, half rising from cover. "Down," the cowboy barked. "Stay down." The attackers sensed it. Their shouts grew bolder. Boots thundered closer. "He's hit," someone yelled. "Push in." That's when the truth came spilling out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We don't need the kids," one of them snarled. "Just the papers the girl's carrying. The land deeds. The proof." Silence snapped through the cabin. The boy stared at his sister. She stared back, something hard and knowing in her eyes. The cowboy understood in an instant. This was never about cruelty alone. It was theft dressed up as terror. Those men had burned homes and murdered parents because paper and ink were easier to steal than land by honest means. The cowboy straightened despite the pain. He stepped back into the open doorway, blood dark against his coat. "You hear that?" he called into the night. "You're not hunters. You're thieves. And the law will be real interested in what you've admitted." Laughter answered him, nervous, thin. "Law ain't here." The leader spat. The cowboy smiled, slow and dangerous. "It is now." A whistle cut sharp through the dark, 3 notes, carried far. A signal. From the ridge beyond the trees came movement. Lanterns. Horses. Voices that did not belong to the attackers. Deputies. Ranch hands. Men who owed the cowboy favors they hadn't known they were about to repay. The attackers hesitated. Too late. The fight collapsed in on itself. Shots rang out again, short, desperate. One man bolted and was tackled hard in the dirt. Another threw down his rifle and begged. The leader tried to flee, only to find the cowboy blocking his path, wounded arm hanging useless, gun steady in the other hand. "Run," the cowboy said quietly. "I dare you." The man didn't. As dawn began to bleed into the sky, the land fell silent once more. Smoke drifted away. The cabin still stood. The children were alive. And the truth, long buried in fear, lay exposed in the open, where justice could finally see it. Hiding was never going to be enough. Standing was the only thing that ever was. The gunfire faded with the night, leaving behind a silence so deep it rang in the ears. Smoke drifted low across the ground, carrying the sharp smell of powder and torn earth. By the time the first pale line of dawn touched the horizon, the attackers were gone, some fleeing into the dark, others lying bound and broken, waiting for the law they thought would never reach them. Justice on the frontier was rarely clean, but this time it had come. The cowboy stood still for a long moment after it was over, rifle lowered, listening. Not for riders, not for threats, for breathing, for life. When he was certain the danger had passed, he turned back toward the cabin and gave a single, quiet call. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The boy emerged first, eyes wide, fear still clinging to him like a second skin. He scanned the land, expecting betrayal, expecting the cowboy to vanish the way so many adults had before. But the man was still there, dust-streaked, wounded, unbowed. The girl followed, stepping into the light slowly, as if the morning itself might be a trick. When she saw the open sky and no guns pointed her way, her shoulders finally dropped. Inside the cabin, wounds were cleaned with steady hands. Water was boiled. bandages torn from shirts already ruined by the night. No one spoke much. Words felt too small for what had almost been lost. As the sun rose fully, it lit the land in gold, scarred ground, broken boards, and all. The cabin still stood. The children were alive. Fear, for the first time in a long while, loosened its grip. On the frontier, safety was never permanent, but it could be earned. And that morning it was. Out on the frontier, hiding was often the smart choice. Keep your head down. Shut your door. Let danger pass someone else by. Survival rewarded silence, and most folks learned that lesson early. But every so often, the land remembers someone who chose differently. That cowboy could have hidden those children and ridden away before the dust settled. No one would have blamed him. The frontier never punished men for looking the other way. Yet when fear came knocking, he didn't hide. He stood, and in doing so, he drew a line that couldn't be crossed without consequence. So I'll ask you this. As the night finally loosens its grip, what would you have done? When hiding felt safer than standing, when the cost of courage was written in blood and fire, would you have opened the door?